Hi, friends, and welcome back to Liam Teaches Chess. Continuing my series where I review my tournament games on the road to 2000 USCF. I'm playing a Swiss tournament today, which means you play 4 rounds. Typically, if you win, you play someone who won. If you lost, play someone who lost. In round 1, I'm playing with the black pieces. I'm around 1860 USCF live. And my opponent is 1280, an older gentleman by the name of Ed. So the game opens up e4, and I play d5, the Scandinavian. He takes. I play knight f6, plays knight f3. I take the pawn with my knight. He plays d4, and I play bishop f5. Sometimes creating threats of going for the c2 pawn. He plays pawn a3, clearly worried about knight b4. Not a very inspiring move. Something like c4, trying to grab space, probably better. I play pawn e6, and he plays bishop f4, blundering his bishop. And, this is the first game of the day. I'd not felt the best the day before for whatever reason. And believe it or not, I missed a free piece. So, I'm sure many of you watching this are much lower rated than me. Like my chess.com rapid account is around 2150. My Lee Chess Rapid is around 2300. My chess.com Blitz is around 2000. So even at my level, we miss free pieces. Like, I don't know. I just wasn't thinking. I remember being surprised seeing this move because, I've probably played thousands of Blitz games online and I've never seen bishop f4. Well, a good reason. People usually don't give away pieces for free. My opponent didn't mention it to me after the game. I play bishop d6. Yikes. He trades. I take with the pawn. Passing towards the center of the board, controlling the e5 square. Plays pawn c3. Again, you know, I think weaker players have a tendency to want to be solid where, okay, you have a pawn chain. B2 is your only weak point. So you feel good, right? Like you're playing someone 600 points higher rated than you. You don't want to feel like you're playing risky, but I think c4 is just a better move. Kick my knight away. You grab space in the center. You have a square for your knight now. You cannot be afraid when you're playing someone better than you. You're just never going to win like that, right? So pawn c3, not the best move. I play queen b6, putting pressure on the b pawn. Queen d2 is played by my opponent. Not a great move, right? Because you take the d2 square for the knight, but there aren't many good options, right? If you go to, you take the square from your bishop, although perhaps you could fianchetto your bishop. You cannot go to c2 due to my light square bishop. So just queen d2, and I develop my knight to c6, getting my piece out. And finally, he plays pawn c4, something he should have done many turns ago, right? I drop my knight back to f6. Computer considers it a mistake. He plays knight c3. I castle. He plays bishop e2. Note he cannot play something like bishop d3. Then I can trade and pick up the b pawn as long as I'm not worried about rook b1, which I don't know what I would have done here. It's usually not a great idea to allow this rook to invade. Um, and here, I think for a while, and I do find the best move, which is knight a5. I considered knight e4, trying to, you know, hoping he castles and something like this happens where I win his d pawn. I considered bishop g4. I considered what happens if he pushes his pawns, and I realized that knight a5 threatens a fork that's annoying to deal with. And my opponent responds with rook a2, defending, getting out of the fork, right? And I play rook a c8, improving my rook, developing my rook, and applying pressure to the c4 pawn, which I don't think he can defend. And so he responds with c5, in which I take, and then I take with my queen, which I think his intention was, if I take with my rook, playing something like pawn b4, where you fork my pieces. But by taking with the queen, if you do the same thing, you lose your knight. and yeah, you get my knight back, but now you have these doubled A pawns, you're down a pawn, you're just objectively worse. So after queen takes c5, he castles, and I get my last piece in the game with rook f d8. My opponent plays queen f4, kind of an annoying move to deal with, and I drop my knight into b3, where my knight's just very annoying like this. It keeps the rook in jail, because the rook wants to come back and play chess. This is kind of slow. I don't think my knight's going to live here forever. Like, eventually, I'm going to play d2 or d4 and trade some pieces probably, get my rooks in the game. But I do have ideas of playing stuff like a5, b5, a4, trying to cement the knight here. My opponent plays h3, giving his king some lift, I thought. And so I respond in kind with h6 because I kind of want to see what white does here. And then they play g4, and I realized, oh, g5 might be an issue. So I'm trying to decide between bishop g6, bishop h7, and bishop d3. I do decide bishop d3, and I think my opponent should just go for it with g5 here. Um, you're worse, you're losing, but you might as well get an attack going. Something like taking with the knight, where now you are at least, you have ideas of trying to checkmate on h7. I do cover that for now with multiple pieces, but I do think this would have been a good idea. Instead, my opponent plays queen b4, which just shows kind of a lack of understanding. I talked to him after the game, and he said he just wanted to get his rook into the game, which I understand. He's anxious to get his rook to play, but when you're playing someone stronger than you, it's weaker players tend to think like, oh, I'll trade all the pieces, and then how bad can it be? But the truth is that the end game is often where knowledge is strongest, right? Like, anyone can blunder tactically, right? Like, I didn't see a free bishop at the start of the game. So anyone can miss checkmate, whatever, they can lose tactically, but it's just quite unlikely he's going to outplay me in an end game where he's already worse, right? So I happily trade, and then I trade again, and I play a6, just shutting the rook out of invading like this. He chases my knight, and I make more trades occur with knight d2, and I take with the rook, and rook c3. I simply trade more because I know I win the b pawn. If you take like this, of course you lose your knight. So again, like, a mistake here to trade everything, because we reach an end game where I'm just up 2 pawns. I have the much better rook, super active. It's on my opponent's 7th rank. I'm going to be able to get my king in the game. White has weaknesses. And so my opponent plays b5. I can play a5 or takes, probably. A5, maybe something like rook a1 coupled with b6 is annoying, but I probably can just play b6 against rook a1. I have a passed a pawn, but I figured this is fine too, just taking. And he plays rook a1. I play rook b3, originally intending to take on h3, but after knight e2, I realized that there's really no need to go for this complication. Where, yeah, I mean, I can win 2 pawns, but I might be, losing material here. Um, there's really just no need to go for this, but it's a pretty comfy win, just by getting my knight in the game. And against rook a8, I think rook a8 is a mistake because you are forcing my king to get active, which is something I was going to do anyways. And rook b8, I simply respond pawn b6, where my knight defends my b pawn, and now I'm going to start pushing my other b pawn. He plays rook b7, and again, I improve the king to g6 to defend f7. He plays king g2, and I would pay attention to this endgame for those of you trying to improve in the endgame, because it's pretty instructive, where I first play rook b1 and simply push my pawn down the board. He plays knight f4, forcing a trade of knights. Again, trading into a lost position. I happily trade. And yes, I'm going to lose this b pawn, but this e pawn is going to be the issue for white, where I simply get this pawn one move away from queening, and he plays king f3. And the issue for him is he can never go into the E or G files because if you do, I always check the king moves and then I promote where my pieces protect each other, right? Same thing. You go to the E file, I check, I promote, and you lose. So with that in mind, I play king h7, unpinning my e pawn, and now I simply start throwing my e pawn up the board where my goal is to either get the king to step on the e file or to get the f pawn to remove in order to check and promote. So he plays king f5. I play pawn e4. You cannot take it. He plays rook b3. I play pawn e3. If you take with the rook, I simply move my rook one square, and when you go back behind the pawn, I am able to promote. Um, Again, if you take with the pawn, I check you and promote. So very instructive endgame. What the white king would like to do is it would like to just go back and forth on h2 and g2, right? If it does, then I'm never going to be able to check and promote. But anywhere else, the king's in trouble. And even going back on h2 and g2, my e pawn is just going to be an issue for white. So rook after pawn e3, he ends up taking. I promote to a queen, and then he resigns um, here, where you know I'm just going to checkmate him with my king and rook. Maybe promote another pawn to a queen if I want. And so, despite playing pretty shaky in round one, I get the dub. Round two. By the way, this was played at the St. Pete Chess Club. This was a stronger tournament than normal, which is great, right? There was I am playing Lyubo in round two, who I've played a lot of games against Lyubo. He's 2100, usually the highest rated member in the club, although I think I'm pretty equal to him. And but for today, we had another 2100 show up, another 2000, like and two other 2000. So pretty great to get some higher rated players at the club. I am playing Lyubo with the white pieces, which is good because we've played like 11 or so games and I've only had white 2 times, 3 times maybe. So I play c4, he plays c6, I play g3, d5, and I had watched a YouTube video the night before, and I had seen that despite me not playing the setup in the YouTube video, he said that you can kind of play this setup against this Karo Khan system, and I don't know. I should not be doing this though because yeah, I know this setup where you can go like knight e2, d4, b3, bishop b2, knight c3, something like this. You double fianchetto. Um, but as someone who's played thousands of blitz games, I've not played this recently. I don't play it a lot. I usually play like knight f3, so I'm immediately just in unfamiliar territory. And you could say the computer thinks it's a mistake because I believe right away black can just take. And the d3 square is a problem where you can pile up on it. You're going to be able to defend yourself. So yeah, I just immediately out of the opening, I am worse. Plays e5. I put my knight on e2. He takes on c4. And yeah, like here I had debated playing pawn b3 first, in which case I think I'm fine because I play bishop b2. It's just kind of slow. I'm defending myself here. I do think b3 is the engine's best move, but I was like, no, I got to develop knight e2. And then he takes on c4, and I was like, oh, probably should have played pawn b3, but whatever. No time to panic. I castle. Again, I think black's best plan is to try to clamp on the d3 square by something like bishop f5 and bishop d3, where it's just very annoying. You can play pawn e4, and if I can never move these, like I just can't play chess if all my pieces are restricted to the space. But he does play bishop e7, and that has me playing knight a3, where you don't want to play bishop e7, knight a3, and then take. Yes, you doubled my pawns, but my bishop gets in the game like this. And my knight applies pressure to the c pawn here. He plays bishop e6, and I play f4, just realizing that like things have not gone well for me. I need to get something going. Like I'm threatening to play f5. He plays e4, and I do go forward with f5. He plays knight d5. I play queen c2, applying pressure to c4 and e4. He plays b5, and I'm trying to decide between knight f4, knight d4, knight c3. I do decide knight c3, but before I play it, I have to calculate for a while because b4 forks my knight. And, here I calculated knight takes, bishop takes, which would be, I think, just losing. Can't take this pawn because the bishop pins me here. I do win the pawn back. Black has some weaknesses themselves. I also calculated um, bishop takes, pawn takes, and then bishop takes knight like this. And then, queen takes, and I develop like this. That looked fine for me. And then I thought his best line was takes, and then simply taking with the pawn, fixing your structure, forcing me to play knight b5. And, here my plans would be to play like knight d4, pawn b3, just trying to bust up this structure. But I think the engine just thinks I'm significantly worse after knight d6 because my knight is kind of offsides. If I ever drop it into d4, he just takes. And yeah, like this is annoying for me. I'm just toast here. But he does it. He surprises me after knight c3, where he plays knight a6, and I was like, okay, I'll take the e pawn. Happy to get rid of this pawn. It was restricting my bishop, my knight. I've gained back a pawn I've lost, so he plays knight b4. I take his knight with check. He takes here. I play queen d1. He plays knight d3. And I noticed that I have this move e4 where the bishop is just trapped, right? And so he takes, and if I'm too earnest and I take with the bishop, he does have queen d4, forking my bishop and my king. And so after takes, I first play queen e2, pinning the bishop to the king. And he plays queen d4 anyways, king h1, castles, really nothing to do. You can't move the bishop. It's illegal to move into check. Knight f2 here, I just take. But here I take with the queen. Taking with the bishop walks into pins and probably loses the game. So I take with the queen. Now he has knight f2. I take and take. And after the dust settles, I'm feeling pretty good here because yeah, I have two pieces that are not playing, and I need to get this bishop in the game to start playing. But if I'm able to defend, two pieces are often considered better than a rook. So as long as I don't have any back rank issues, I think I'm going to win this game. So I play queen f3, try and trade queens. He plays queen e1, which does surprise me because I just play queen f1. He plays rook e8. Cannot trade because I would lose my bishop. But I play knight c2. Obviously I want to get this bishop in the game, but so I'm considering stuff like b3, but this would just lose right here, right? So I'm patient. I play knight c2, chasing the queen away. He does surprise me a little bit that he trades the queens. Like I don't have that many active pieces, so I do get it somewhat, but this knight does a great job of keeping the rooks out, and I do think I'm going to find time to get my bishop in the game. Plays rook e5, posing questions to my undefended f5 pawn. And I play knight e3, simply shutting down the e file for now. He plays bishop g5, threatening to take, and take. And so I respond g4. He plays rook d8, threatening to take, and rook d1, pinning the bishop to the king. And I play bishop e2. It's a little scary to walk into a pin like this, but now take, and there is no rook d1. My bishops do a great job of keeping the rooks out. He plays h5, and rather than taking and allowing takes, I simply play pawn h3, and he takes, and the most natural move to me is taking with the pawn. But I did have some worries that whatever the king comes here, the rook comes here, the bishop comes here. I did have some worries that maybe I get in some issues like that. So I figured let's take with the bishop here. There's no open files. When you're playing against the rooks, you want to not have a lot of open files. Um, Computer does think taking with the H pawn is better. He plays G6 and I take. Engine thinks F5 is your best move here, but he takes like this. And now I play A4, planning to get my rook in the game on the A file. I can't really go for something like B3 here because he has C3. And, if I take the pawn, I lose the knight. You're attacking it twice. And, if I do anything else, you're going to take here. My knight's not defended. Now I have this D pawn that's very annoying. Things would be collapsing. So, despite me wanting to, I can't get this dark squared bishop in the game yet. So I play A4. He does get rid of my knight, which does surprise me somewhat. And then he plays B4. I play A5, trying to get my rook in like this. He plays A6. I play King G2. Figured might as well get my king over here. These are clearly where he's trying to push. He moves his king as well. I march my king over. I thought maybe cutting off my king would have been a good idea. But we get this. He plays rook d5 and rook a4. The engine's top move because if he takes like this, my plan is to take like this. And now you have a bunch of isolated weak pawns. Something like rook a1, I can just take on c4. And if you play pawn c6, which you did in the game, well, now your rooks are no longer attacking my a pawn. And here I play king e2, preparing to play bishop d2. He plays rook d3. And here I think for a while, with me originally intending to do bishop c8, rook g5, trying to get into g2, take a6, rook g2, rook f3, and rook c2 is what I calculated. And I wasn't really sure what's going on here because I'm losing this bishop, right? There's nowhere to put it. Maybe I could defend it actually, but then he just plays rook d1. And then my plan is to move the bishop and push this pawn and try to get a queen. But I decided no need to rush that. Let's first go for bishop d2, and then I can do all of that. And my plan is to, like, put the bishop on e1, I think. As soon as you're not double attacking my e pawn. He plays rook b3, and I thought about rook a2. I thought about bishop c1, and I was like, you know what? Let's just go back to bishop c1. He plays king f7, and now I do go for bishop c8. He's very low on time at this point. He has probably like a minute 30, and I probably have 5 minutes. So we're both low on time. He plays rook g5. I do take his a pawn. He plays rook g2, and I play king f3, and he plays rook c2. And here, I just played bishop takes c4 because, I straight up didn't see that the rook was defending here. Just unacceptable. Engine thinks I'm winning after rook a1. Evaluates it as like +2. I'm very simply going to play something like bishop b7, a6, a7, a8. And it's complicated if we go for something like this. But white is winning with best play. I don't know if I would have won because black has threats of his own, right? But yeah, I wasn't really thinking. I was just like, okay, now I'm going to take on c4 and push my a pawn, and that's what I did. And he took back, and I was like, oh, uh-oh. So I mean, nothing to do but to push the a pawn anyways. He takes on c1. I play a7, and he plays rook e1. And the issue is if I do promote to a queen, he has the perpetual check with rook e3, I believe. And I would love to sack this queen for the two rooks, being left with the rook, but king g4. I think he has probably just rook e4. Stacking for one of the rooks isn't enough because then I'm just down a pawn. And I think he can just check me forever. He did offer a draw. Um, Here, like, after he played rook e1, he offered a draw. He has 30 seconds, and I don't wanna draw, I wanna win, right? So I'm trying to make a8, king g4 work, I'm trying to make king f4. I do get mated in some lines, right? Something like this. I'm probably gonna get mated, which is not ideal. Checkmate like this, right? Um, and so I don't know, I'm stubborn. I probably should have just taken the draw here because I didn't see a win, but I was like, let's just try to make king e4 work. He takes on e3, d5, and yeah, I saw all this, and I realized I'm just down a pawn, so I should have taken the draw because it is a draw. But I play a8, and now I'm losing, but whatever. We eventually reach a position where I win both of these pawns, and my rook holds this h3 pawn, and he's trying to win it, and he's just not able to, and so it is a draw. I do end up drawing. Bit of a bummer because I thought I was winning, and I am if I found this move, but I'm also losing at points, especially the opening. I just played the opening bad, so um, you know, good result. I won, or I drew 2100. I'm rated like 1860, so a good result to draw Lyubo here in game two, bringing us to game three. So for game three, I'm playing with the black pieces, and I'm playing a guy by the name of Goran. And this guy's pretty interesting because I mean he's probably in his late 30s or early 40s, maybe a little bit older. He's rated 2000, and what's interesting about him is he makes every move almost instantly. Which I mean, you see some kids play like this, right? But it's very unusual for an adult to play so fast. He had played next to me in round two, and just like lost almost immediately against the 2100, just like blitzing out moves for no reason. So he plays e4, and he had like looked over my shoulder in round one at my like score sheet. So I knew he knew I played the Scandinavian. And so I played five, the Sicilian. I play both. I am thinking that I need to just like play more solid openings, which the Scandinavian is not considered. Now I know the Scandinavian pretty well. So against this opponent, I think I should have played d5 just because it's what I play all the time in like 3-0 blitz. And so if he's going to blitz out against me, I'm probably going to get a comfortable position. The Sicilian, on the other hand, I mean, we're playing game 40, so both sides have 40 minutes. I can play it. I can play it well. I've gotten good results, but I don't know the theory inside and out, and I often have to think, and I can just play the opening poorly, where kind of hard for me to just like get destroyed in the opening as the Scandinavian. So he plays knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, and g6 is the main line here. Castles, bishop g7, bishop takes c6, b takes c6. So white gives up its bishop, it's his light squared bishop, but doubles my c pawns. Also gives me the open b file for my rook, rook e1, and I just go for d5 right away. Again, I already don't know the theory here. Maybe d6 is a little bit better, but I wasn't sure what was happening after e5. So I just went for d5 right away, trying to undouble. And he plays e5, bishop g4, h3, bishop takes, queen takes, e6, d3, queen c7, bishop f4, knight e7. So developing here. And after knight d2, even before this somewhat, I just realized that like this pawn is an issue. I don't know how to cleanly defend it. He's going to be able to pile up pressure on it, moves like this. So I want to play like d4 maybe, or I want to drop a knight on d4. So I play knight f5, and he plays c3. And yeah, maybe I just need to do this. It's not great though, like giving his knight invading in here. Like this doesn't look good to me either. Um, so I play rook b8. He plays rook b2, and I play a5. Just realizing that like I'm in trouble and I need to make things happen. I'm trying to make like a4 happen to stop knight b3. Maybe I'm trying to make pawn a3 happen. He plays g4. I drop my knight back to e7. He plays knight b3, and I want to play like c4, but, just takes. He improves his knight. Um, I don't see how I'm gonna defend the C pawn, so I'm losing a pawn. I'm down somewhat on time now. I play rook b5, knowing that he can play c4, which I take. He takes, and I play rook b4. So I'm just trying to make it complicated. Engine thinks I'm significantly worse. He plays queen e4, defending his c pawn, so his knight is free to take on c5. I castle. Really no way to hold on to it, right? Like queen a7, bishop e3. Yeah, nothing to do. So castles, he takes on c5, and I play rook a8, where it's already very annoying, right? The knight can come in here. His rook is going to threaten to come in here. So I do play rook a8. He plays rook d1. Again, it's very annoying. I play queen a7, preparing to meet rook d7 with queen takes. And I think I set up a trick here where I know this guy's moving instantly, so I was pretty confident I could trick him if he just keeps on playing natural moves, which he did with bishop e3. And now it finally allows me to play knight d5, where if you take my knight, you lose your queen. And, now my knight is in the game. It's threatening to hit the bishop. If you move your bishop, you lose your knight. And he blunders again with bishop d4, where I simply take his c pawn. And now the rook is pinning the bishop to your queen. So I'm feeling much better now, right? Like I was feeling, I was just getting outplayed in the opening, and I was getting destroyed. This guy's moving instantly. Again, like I'm just toast here. And now I felt back in it. And I am back in it. And then he blunders with rook c1, which I didn't even consider the best move here. Which, funny enough, I played like a blitz game today, and this pattern arose again, and I did see it. But the best move and a winning move here for black is just queen takes c5, shocking me, my opponent, the audience, everyone. And the point is, if you take my queen, you lose your queen. So I win a piece like that. If you take my rook, I take your rook. I took a knight as well, so you lose a piece like that. And really nothing else to do. You move your queen. I can probably either take or play just queen b5, you know, and just stay defending like this. Um, so I missed that opportunity. Disappointing to not consider that, but I did play. I traded, and now I played queen c7, defending my c6 pawn, getting the queen out of this pin, putting pressure on e5. My opponent plays knight d3. I play rook b8, improving my rook. He plays bishop c5, threatening bishop d6. And so I play bishop f8, pretty much have to. He trades. I take with the rook. Taking with the king is maybe okay, but it can get scary if the queen gets in here. So took with the rook, plays knight c5. I put the rook on c8, defending my c6 pawn. And he blunders again with queen a4, just moving too quick. Forgetting that his queen is no longer defending his center e pawn. And this is a great trade for me where his queen's out of play compared to mine. My pieces are centralized. His king is weak. And I play knight f4 here. I also considered taking the pawn, but I play knight f4 where, I'm threatening knight e2, forking like this. I have ideas of trying to get in here to try a checkmate. I'm threatening h3. I'm just winning now. So I go from playing to, or just like getting outplayed in the opening, to this guy moving too fast and letting me back in the game, you know? So he plays rook e1. I considered queen d5, but, after something like rook e4, stopping me from seeing here, or knight e4, I wasn't sure, like what's going on here. He's threatening knight f6. And so instead I just um, took on h3 with check, plays king g2. I take on, or I go back to f4 check. He plays king f3. And I play queen g5, defending my knight and getting out of danger from the rook. He plays queen a6, and I originally intended rook d8, just, trying to invade. I'm trying to checkmate the white king here. I sided on rook d8, deciding that I'd get in this way, but then I allow the knight to move with e4. The knight is no longer pinned to the queen. And here I play queen e5, getting out of danger, defending my knight still. He plays queen a3, and I play knight d5, trying to get in with my queen like this, win this pawn, and checkmate him. And then he plays queen d6, and I thought I just had to trade queens here. I didn't even notice that I could have played queen takes b2, which I want to keep the pieces on the board, even though this drops the c pawn, because this king is in the middle of the board. I'm probably going to be able to get an attack going. This pawn's going to drop. I get my rook in. Yeah, this check's a little bit to worry about, but my knight covers it for now. And yeah, the white king's just too exposed. So that's what I should have done. But I went for this because after the dust settles, I'm just up 2 pawns. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to win here. Then he plays rook a1, and I think I make a practically poor decision here, where I think a good practical move is just like rook b8, put my rook on the a file, and I'm probably going to be able to march my king in, and my knight and my rook are going to be able to stop this a pawn. And again, I'm up 2 pawns, like, and I have a pawn of my own I can start pushing to pose questions. So this is what I think is a good practical decision. It is a little scary with this a pawn marching down the board, but I really tried to make knight b4 work, where after a4, rook a2, rook takes, knight takes. I simply thought I was like getting back. I trade the rooks. I have a pawn of my own. I have this guy. I thought I could probably hold this. Now, what I went for was very complicated, where I have to defend this a pawn. And worse, instead of playing rook a2, I have this move knight c2, where I chase the rook off of the a file. So something like rook c1, rook a2. I'm going to be able to simply move my knight and win the a pawn. And if I win the a pawn, this game's just pretty easy to win up at least 2 pawns, if not 3. So not accurate by me there. We do go for this. And then the game gets very crazy, where like I go for f5, and I was just like low on time here, so we're gonna have to cut to some positions where I stopped notating. Kind of wish I did notate more, but I have the rough idea of the positions where my idea is I want to stay like this knight is going to be able to stop the king and the pawn by itself, but I don't know if I'm ever going to get tempo to push my pawns as well, where ideally I would like to sack this knight for the pawn and then go queen and just go win like that. But we get something like this where, the point is I am stopping the pawn from pushing at a certain point because I'm always going to be able to fork the pawn and the king. We have to whatever, some moves occurred and we eventually got this position ish, where I probably played something like knight c7 here, stopping a6, king b6. I just check you, king c5. I go back, knight c6. I can go to knight a6. And, if you play something like king b6, I go to knight b4. I'm always threatening or stopping the pawn from moving. I can just stay bouncing between these squares, and white can't make progress. And I don't know if I can make progress, but whatever. We eventually reached a position where it was like, um, something like this was on the board, and I think it's a little wrong though, because I think like his knight is here, and I'm like trying to make h4, h3 work, but I'm always concerned that he can basically plop his knight on g3 and h1 and stop my pawns. And so something occurs. It is just an objective draw, but something occurs and he like it's an objective draw. And then and I'm trying to win, right? Because I knew I was winning after he moved too quick. We reached this position where he moved too quick. He should have been winning because I blundered. And we reach this position, which is an easy draw, where it's losing if this king is on h3 and it's white to move because white has queen b7 check and my queen has to block and I take like g2 here, but I don't really know what happened. I like some what I think white played some moves and somehow I tricked myself here where I think I just blacked out and I have 40 seconds on the clock. So I'm obviously moving quick, but I think I just missed that I can keep on checking the king. And for whatever reason, I play like queen f2 or something here, trying to stalemate myself. Like this is just a clear draw, right? Like, and it's a pretty easy draw to hold, I would say. It was complicated at points, but it is not where I can just, and whatever, I somehow blundered and just lose like this. And so I don't know. This game's it's a frustrating result where I threw away I would have drawn another 2000 rated player. Um, I'm objectively winning at points too, right? This guy's instant blitzing his moves. So, and then yeah, I just like unacceptable to lose this. Just like you can't lose this. This is an easy even with 5 seconds on the clock, it's an easy hold. And I don't know what happened, but I somehow just like tricked myself and I think I somehow I ran out of checks or didn't see any checks or something. Like maybe he had the queen on e2 and the king here, and I just don't have any. Yeah, that's like probably what happened. It was like, yeah, I don't know, something like this occurred. Um, but I lost, and so there is some good to take from this game, right? Like I was significantly outplayed in the opening. I think the engine thinks white is like +3 at points. Clearly, I need to work on my openings. Um, at my level if I'm going to be playing the Sicilian. But I battled back to even be better, battled back to a draw when I'm worse. So, but whatever, I did lose. And it was a really disappointing loss because not only all those things, but now I knew that, I mean, if I had won or if I had drawn the game, I would have played another 2000 rated opponent, which I'm always trying to play the strongest rated players, not only because that's your best path to gaining rating, but also because Um, you know, one of the best ways to get better at chess is to play people as good as you can, whether they're better than you, equal to you, whatever. And you don't typically learn as much playing someone who you're much stronger than. And unfortunately, that occurred to me where I'm playing an older gentleman who's rated around 1250, who, he got like a round one by and he beat like a 1300. So he had 2 points. I had one and a half. So I played him and I decided to play e4. I don't usually play e4, but I am considering switching and I figured it would be fun to just change it up. I don't really need to play my main opening against a 1200 older gentleman. It's not like he's an underrated kid. And it would be instructive because I do I do teach chess and so I do need to be familiar with all openings to some degree. By the way, hit me up if you want chess lessons. Knight of 6. So this is the Alekine's defense. E5. I immediately don't know what I'm doing, by the way. Knight d5, d4, d6. I have played this on Blitz sometimes where I always get a bad position after something like this. And so I play f4, g6, knight f3, both developing here. C6, not a move I love by him, right? Taking pieces from his knight. I think knight b6 is the main move here. Um, I castle, he castles, queen e2, defending my bishop. Bishop e6, not a good move because I can respond with knight g5, hitting the star squared bishop. Bishop f5, g4, just throwing the pawns, getting an attack going. I want to make things like f5 work, e6 work. I play c3 because I want to play e6 right away, where something like takes, check, king moves, take, I win a pawn. But if I go for that right away, I lose the d pawn with check. So that's why I play pawn c3. He plays queen b6. I do go for e6, takes, and he plays rook f7. I play knight b d2. and he takes, and I take, pinning his rook to his king. You can't grab this pawn because you lose the rook with check. So he plays knight a6. I do grab the pawn now that his knight can't jump into c6. So I'm up a pawn. He plays knight c7. I play queen b3. Happy to trade queens, up a pawn, winning position for me. He plays d5. Not a great move in my opinion. Um, just, taking squares from his pieces. I play knight f3. He plays queen e6. And, I almost blundered here with knight g5. And that's a blunder because queen takes g4. So good trick by my opponent, but I do play pawn h3. I think actually f5 is the engine's move because the point is after takes. Now I can play knight g5. But I played h3. There's really no need to rush. And I did kind of regret not trading queens when I had the chance to after he plays queen e6 because it's just, it's a little bit more complicated. I didn't need it to be that way, but h3, bishop h6, putting pressure on the f pawn, and knight e5, allowing my bishop to see the f pawn, hitting his rook, centralizing my knight. Really, really powerful knight. He plays rook f8. I play bishop d2, allowing my rook to get in the game. b6. Yeah, I did consider taking this b pawn for a while, but figured there's no need even. I play rook e1, queen d6, getting off of the file with the rook. Rook e2, preparing to either double my rooks on the f file or the e file, and also defending my bishop. He plays pawn e6. I play queen c2, perhaps having ideas of sacrificing here one day. And he blunders with king g7 due to me having pawn g5, trapping his bishop. Takes, takes, and then he trades a bunch, which again, maybe he wanted to get out of there. It was the last game. I don't know, but it is just, obviously if you trade everything when you're losing, it's just not a good idea. And so here I play bishop c1 to allow my queen to get to f2. He plays knight d6, and I think for a while here and find the best continuation, which is queen f6, knight g8, and knight g4, threatening knight h6, checkmate. And so black has to respond with either queen f8, in which case I would trade, or no, sorry, I'd play knight h6, or knight f5, which he does play. And I play knight h6 anyways, trading pieces. Now I just have a bishop. He plays queen f7, and rather than trading right away, I trade like this, where his king is just one square back. And yeah, I just go on to win a pretty comfortable game here. I didn't continue to notate, where I simply get my king in, win some of his pawns, and he resigns. So that that means I ended the day with 2.5 out of 4. I was happy to get 2 games against a 2100 and a 2000 rated player who seems to have quite the variance. That means that all my tournament games are recorded so far. So after having a bad tournament where I dropped to 1827, I've gained rating in 3 tournaments: 1846, 1864, 1860. I gained 2 points, right? Like I drew. We can look at it. I beat 13. Ed, who's a 1200-ish player. I drew Lyubo, who did end up winning the tournament, 2100. So that was a good result, even though I was winning at points. I lost to 3, Goran, who, again, never should have lost that game when just having king or queens. I don't know what happened there. Terrible. And then I beat Robert. But if I had drawn Goran, I think I get to play Kai. And I would have preferred that even if I lost, just because, gaining 2 points, whatever. I don't play strictly for the rating, but I just need to have one, one good tournament where I win all my games or something. And this 1866 will go to like 1966. And then I'll just be like an average tournament away. So I keep on having a bunch of okay to good tournaments, gaining 20 points, whatever. But I need to have one great tournament. And in this field, it's doable, right? Like no one is like, I'm not playing grandmasters. I'm not even playing masters. Like I'm playing strong experts to experts, and I can beat those players. I just know I can. So decent tournament. I am about 130 points away from reaching 2,000, which again, like if I go 4-0 this tournament, I would have been rated like 1966 or something instead. So not going to be easy, but it is doable. Thanks for watching, guys. Please do be sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment below. Trying to grow this channel. Appreciate you. Have a good day.